That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Sometimes they use them, sometimes they don't. What was the drama about?
I don't want to get into it, but there's hard days where we don't feel as much Dhamma or the fruits of Dhamma, and it's harder to navigate, especially things like sickness or like mental problems.
Mm.
I hope Dhammarato is doing all right with the low energy. Even if you have low energy, it could be hard to practice. It could be hard to embody the Dhamma.
Yeah. Buddha Dasa used to say, when we're sick, when things are falling apart, that's the best time to practice. Because anybody can feel good when things are going well,
Yeah. Yeah.
If it doesn't, U.G. Krishnamurti used to say, if it doesn't work in traffic, then what's the point? Anybody can be peaceful on a mountaintop,
Yeah. That's a good one.
Can you be peaceful in hell? Can you find joy in hell? That's a good question, And that's why the books are nice, but the books won't always help you. Even the teachers won't always help you, It's like if you're a bike racer or a car racer. You can get a fancy uniform like a monk. You can study all the mechanics and know everything about your car, like the scholars. You can have the best car, the best vehicle, like being in the best surrounding conditions, like going to a Wat in Thailand or whatever. You can have all that stuff. But in racing, it doesn't matter. Are you going fast? Are you relaxed behind the wheel? Are you winning the race? In racing, that's what matters. They don't give a fuck what you look like or what your credentials are, like Western society's obsessed with. Can you run a good race? Can you do well in the race? And in the Dhamma, it's can you find joy in gladdening the mind here and now? Who cares if you're the king of France, or if you have a doctorate, or if you're a monk in some temple with the biggest prayer beads? Can you find peace right where you are, right where you sit? And we only have to ask ourselves this question. Nobody's going to answer it for us. Nobody's going to go in our head and say, "Oh, you're suffering. Let's find the correct way to practice and be happy." You really have to do some self-investigation. Aw, such a cute kitty. I love cats, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what you said about race and race car drivers, how they have to go fast and be relaxed behind the wheel.
Yeah. And go the distance while they're going fast. And it's just an analogy. It's not perfect, but a lot of times in the Dhamma, people get obsessed with the studying, with the memorization, with the different vocabulary words, with the robes, with the necklaces, with the rituals, with the how long have you been practicing, how long this, how long that. But sometimes, well, damn near almost every time, a lot of beginning students, they just never quite understand that all that shit, it's not that it's good or bad. It just doesn't do anything for you with gladdening your mind. Unless you allow it to. But if you think, oh, I know all the words, oh, I studied the most, oh, I'm a monk in a monastery, and you think that's going to do anything for you, if you're depending on that, then you're just fooling yourself. We really have to ask ourselves, day by day, these things happen to me that I can't control, and they piss me off. They get me angry. They get me frustrated. Why am I practicing the Dhamma? What is all of this for? Those are the real questions. What the fuck are we doing? If we're just going to sit here and suck each other's dicks, we're just pissing in the wind. You know what I mean? Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to find peace. We want satisfaction. And when we have calls like this, it's a reminder of the simple things, the remembering sati, remember to look and change. That's the whole Eightfold Noble Path. That dukkha dukkha nirodha is the point of all this. There's dukkha in this world, and there's a way out of it. And that's all that there is. The Buddha said, both formerly and now I teach one thing and one thing only, dukkha dukkha nirodha. Everything else is bullshit. Everything else, you're just kidding yourself. That's what the whole Pali Canon is just don't worry, be happy. But students don't want to hear that. Students have the Western mentality, especially in the West, of course. They want to run the race. They want to climb the mountain. They want to be the best student. They want all this bullshit. And they spend a lifetime trying to get it. But ironically, if they put all that shit down, all that craving, all that desire, then the kingdom of heaven would unfold right here, right now.
Yeah, and there's a trap because learning some theory and some of the words like sati can be beneficial, and you want to know what other people mean when they say it.
Of course.
Then, you get bogged down with theory and distracted. So it's hard.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah, just like our analogy. A fast race car sure will help you. A fancy fireproof uniform sure will make you feel good. But if you're driving your car into a fucking brick wall, what difference does it make that you know what kind of car you're destroying? You know, the ins and outs of everything to do with that car that you're driving into a wall. So I'd rather have a guy on a lawnmower keeping it on the road rather than having everything that is the best of the best and driving it into a wall. I know what sati means. I know what this. Yes, but can you practice it? Can you drive? And sure, basic knowledge. I'm not against the uniforms. I'm not against the fancy race cars. But you got to become a good driver. You have to learn how to drive.
Learn the basics first. Yeah,
the basics, and then master the basics.
Master the basics. And yeah, it's fair to say that most race car drivers have mastered the basics.
Yeah, and some of them, their arrogance have got them obsessed with the types of cars they drive, who sponsors them during the race, how their girlfriend is doing, getting the best motor, getting the best engine. It's not that they can't do well once in a while. And it's just an analogy. All analogies are flawed by their very nature. So just take it with a grain of salt. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
The point of the analogy is don't rely on bullshit things that don't matter. Rely on things that do matter. And the things that do matter is that the Buddha told us we have the power to change our mind here and now. Everything's okay here and now. Everybody talks about the Dhamma this, the Dhamma that. Very few people understand what the Dhamma is. Their minds are off in the future, off in the present, distracted by something, back in the past, attached to a label, attached to a word, attached to wanting to be the best Buddhist, attached to wanting to get it right. Dhammarata would always say, you don't have to get it right, just have to get it happily.
Yeah.
And that is getting it right. When you have a carefree, light attitude and you're not attached to anything.
If one were to explain the Dhamma to I don't know, a teenager, what would be the best way to do it? Just like you did then?
Like you said earlier, just lead by example.
Okay.
When they make a mistake, don't be so hard on them. Be forgiving. When they come to you for advice, use wisdom instead of ignorance. And just be joyful. Have a joyful, lighthearted attitude with them. Show them that they can change the things in their mind. They don't have to be a slave to the mind. They could be a friend to the mind. They could help guide it. Why do we all, I always say this, why do we all like our grandmas and grandfathers? Nobody's ever liked their grandma and grandpa because when they were around them, they were anxious assholes. You like your grandma and grandpa. Why? Because they had the energy of just loving kindness. They didn't know Buddhism. They didn't know the Dhamma, most of them. But most of them knew that they just loved you and they had a carefree attitude around you.
Yeah.
And that's the Dhamma. They know nothing of Buddha. They know nothing of India or Tibet. They know nothing of Thailand, but they just knew how to love you. And those are some of the most important people in our lives if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Why? Because they didn't judge us. They didn't try to control us. They just loved us. There's a freedom that comes when the Dhamma is practiced correctly. The freedom of letting go of all this bullshit. The freedom of realizing everything's okay right here, right now. There's nothing that needs to be done. Just this breath is enough. Just this breathing right here is fine. And the reason we have Dhamma talks like this is because we're practicing sati. We're practicing the Eightfold Path. We're reminding ourselves, oh yeah, I don't have to be a slave to this bullshit. I don't have to let dukkha control me. I can just let it all go. I love Ajahn Chah's example of the water buffalo. He's trying to keep it on the road, but the buffalo wants to go to the left. It wants to go to the right and eat the vegetables and trample the rice garden. And he says, that's like the mind. The mind wants to get involved in our thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
He's called me back.
Oh, good.
All right, peace.
Love you.
Till there, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Is he coming here? Is he coming here to play?
And he's gonna come over here.
Oh, good.
I wonder if I can set up this mic so you can hear me better.
I hear you fine, but
Oh,
do whatever you want to do. I will never stop somebody from enhancing their audio.
Hello.
Oh, that's nice.
Can you hear me just the same?
No, it sounds slightly better, but I could be mistaken, but it sounds slightly better.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah. If it sounds better, it sounds better. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but that analogy of the water buffalo is like our mind. Ajahn Chah would say if the buffalo goes to the left or to the right off the road, it wants to trample the rice paddies. It wants to eat the vegetables from shopkeepers. And that's like our mind with the thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And Ajahn Chah said, it's a fun game. You'll never be bored because you'll always be able to play this game of not getting involved of what your mind's throwing at you. It's the water buffalo. When it goes too much to the left, if you're getting a little too angry, you have to practice sati and hit it with the stick and say, oh, I see myself getting angry. Get back on the road. Get back of letting go. Get back of not desiring this bullshit that's making you angry. And then it goes towards the right of happiness. Oh, I like this. I got this beautiful woman. Now I'm really on cloud nine. Wait a minute. Practice our sati. Hit the stick on the buffalo. Get that mind back in the center of the road. Like, that stuff's not going to last. Remember, it's only going to lead to more dukkha. And then you get back in the middle of the road. And it's a fun, constant game that you can always play, that I never get tired of personally. Every day it's a fun, challenging game. Not difficult, but challenging in the fun way, you know?
That's a good attitude to have about it. There can be
Yeah.
challenging days. There has been for me where it is a challenge. And maybe sometimes where I completely forget to do Dhamma practice. And I'm just like mired in an illusion, in suffering.
Yeah.
And I know the further you get along in the path, that happens like less likely or with less frequency, less intensity, less duration. But even like monks that have been doing it for like 40 years, I've heard stories where like they wind up in the hospital and all of their meditation practice and ability to focus the mind, to hit it with a stick, it goes away. And that's why they're like, be grateful for when you can practice and you can hit it with a stick, because maybe at some point there will be no stick to hit it with.
Yeah, well, you're never going to free
You never
yourself
know.
from physical pain. It's inevitable. Death, sickness, aging, it's all inevitable. And if you're under the illusion that if you're an enlightened master, you're not going to feel pain, you're not going to go through some times that are a little more tougher than others, then you're deluding yourself. Even the Buddha on his deathbed had great stomach pain. He was complaining, but he also had the right attitude of seeing Mara, aka, in this example, the pain. And he said, oh yeah, and he was able to see it. It's not a magical, a lot of people, they fuck up with the Dhamma because they put it in this magical realm of the Tibetan Buddhist yogis floating in the sky and all this magical bullshit. You can have peace even if you're on the verge of death, even if you're suffering great physical pains. Pain is natural. Suffering is not natural. Suffering is created by man. It's a bunch of bullshit. You know?
You don't think there's anything natural about suffering?
It's a concept. All concepts are delusions, illusions. There's no suffering in reality. There's only a wrong, ignorant perception of reality that turns it into dukkha.
So you don't think dukkha itself is a concept?
It's a concept. Yeah. That's what
Okay.
I'm saying. It's only a concept.
Hmm.
It can't hurt us. Everything is conceptual. Everything is a tool. You can use it to a shovel to dig a garden or to smack somebody over the head. It all depends on what you plan on doing with these tools. And
Yeah.
dukkha is just another tool. Dukkha could be your worst enemy or your best friend or your best teacher. But a lot of people don't see it as their best teacher, who's like a silly Mara that comes around every once in a while. I see you, Mara. You're not going to get me this. A lot of people see it as the end-all, be-all Satan of, oh, poor me, victim mentality bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because our culture showed us that being a victim is what we should do in all situations. Poor me. Nobody has suffering like me. Nobody understands the movie drama of my life. I'm beyond all in my suffering. And it's all bullshit. Everybody has suffering, you know. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to play the victim about it, or are you going to change it? You can change it. It doesn't mean your life's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Just like Jesus on the cross and all his disciples. He's an enlightened master, and all of his disciples, some of them were enlightened masters, and they got skinned alive. They got crucified upside down. Even Christ himself was crucified. John the Baptist, his head got chopped off. It doesn't mean everything's just going to be wonderful in the physical realm, but it does mean everything's going to be wonderful in here, within. That's why they call it spirituality, because it's of the ethereal, it's not of the physical. Society's dependent on the physical to make themselves feel good, but what they call goodness is really just temporary sense pleasures that are fleeting and don't last and only cause more dukkha. And what they call joy and happiness is just temporary sense pleasures that do exactly the same thing. It's both ends of the different snake. The head of the snake is what we all know is suffering, anger.